Oh, baby, we got a heck of a week, a heck of the next 2, 3 weeks here at the bar room discussing the NFL draft and the Chicago Bears. Best way to stay on top of stuff is to subscribe to the Bar Room Network's YouTube channel and wherever you get your audio podcast. My name is Aldo Gandia. Let me bring in my boss, Greg Gabriel. How are you?
I didn't know I was your boss. Wait a minute. I'm not making enough money.
That's right. But I know one guy who's making a lot of money. Why don't you introduce him right now?
Oh, we got a special guest today. Good friend, Eric Edholm from NFL.com, draft writer for them, formerly with Pro Football Weekly, formerly with Yahoo.com, and probably a few others in there too. But and Eric's one of the best. Good friend and very knowledgeable about the draft.
Yeah, thank you. Very nice introduction. Yes, I have been a lot of places. I guess the longer you stay in this business, the more likely you are to be forced to jump around a little bit. I'm happy where I'm at. NFL media has been great to me, and you guys have been great to me too. So happy to jump back on.
Excellent.
Well, thanks for coming on. So we got a big day coming up in a few weeks.
Yep.
Or actually a big weekend coming up in a few weeks that going to alter the look of the Chicago Bears. Obviously, we know what they're doing with the first overall pick. That's a given. The question is, what happens at 9? And I think there's a ton of different scenarios that can happen. And just based on, I'm keeping track of the 30 visits. Based on the 30 visits and the names that have been released, and I think there's only been about 19, 20 of the 30 released. But based on the names that we know, I think it's more likely than not that they're trying to trade out of 9.
Yeah.
Could they stay at 9 and take a pick? Yeah. What fans think is, and you tell me if you agree, disagree, or whatever. Fans are always big on receivers because it's it's that glory position.
Sure.
But you've already got a number 1 and a number 2, and you just traded a 4th-round pick for that number 2 in Keenan Allen. And so it's not as big a need as, say, edge, because there's one edge on this whole team.
Yeah.
And you can trade down a little bit and still get one of the top 3 or 4 edges. And the wide receiver crop is so deep in this particular draft that you're going to go into the 3rd round and probably into the 4th round, and you're going to get a guy that's going to come in and play right away.
Yeah, I think
be a contributor.
Yeah, I think you set it up pretty well there as far as what the landscape looks like for the Bears. I mean, the reality is that they come in, 2 weeks out, they have 4 picks right now, and 2 of them happen in the top 10. So you have to ask yourself, does Ryan Poles, excuse me, slip of the tongue there. Yeah, right. Old habits die hard. Does Ryan Poles want to leave the weekend with 4 picks? And I would guess no, but I suppose the Bears roster has gotten markedly better in the last 2 years. And if you needed to have that kind of a draft class where you have 2 heavy hitters, 2 middle-class guys, and then nothing after that, you put all your energy into undrafted free agents, fine. Okay. It could happen that way, as you said. But, we've heard Matt Eberflus talk about the pass rush need. Certainly that would be a possibility at 9. The quality of receiver is unusual this year. So, if a Rome Odunze is sitting there at 9, would it be tempting? Absolutely. I mean, even with Keenan Allen on board, I think you just look at talent and say, man, could we have a chance to add 2 blue chip players here? Can we afford to pass that up? Do we have enough around us right now to make that call? I still think, like you did, that trading down is going to be a realistic option for them. We saw him move back 1 slot last year. I wouldn't be shocked if something a little bigger, a little farther down happens, but I can see it.
Well, I originally I'm thinking there's no way they're going to pick up a 2 because you got to go down 8, 9 slots to get a 2. So if you go 8 or 9 slots, so now you're talking 16, 17, around in that area. And now you're taking yourself, or potentially taking yourself, out of that top level player.
Yeah.
So do you want to do that? So my thinking is that, we can trade down 3 or 4 spots. We're still going to get a top player. And he even wanted to say wide receiver. The next guy would be Brian Thomas. And I know people that have Brian Thomas in the top 3. What's really unique about the wide receiver group, up until about a month ago, everybody had Marvin Harrison as the number 1 generational player. Well, that's changed. And depending on who you talk to, the top 3 are all pretty much bunched together.
Yeah.
There's not a real, and some people have neighbors, and you've heard people like DJ and Dane Brugler and others. Some teams have Neighbors number 1. I know people that have Adunze as number 2, Neighbors number 1, and Marvin Harrison is number 3.
Yep.
So, but they're that closely grouped together that who comes off the board first really depends on the team that's taking a wide receiver first and where they have the guys ranked. So, it doesn't mean that, let's say Arizona takes Marvin Harrison at 4. It doesn't mean that Marvin Harrison is the unanimous top receiver. He's Arizona's top receiver. And that's what I think some fans don't understand, is that every board is different and people have the players ranked differently, and how they get drafted doesn't necessarily mean that that's the consensus ranking of them around the league.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example of it. If there was a few years ago, and I'm kind of looking as we talk here, I guess it was the 2020 draft where we had a clump of offensive tackles all kind of going in that top group. There was Jedrick Wills, Mekhi Becton, Tristan Wirfs, Austin Jackson, and Andrew Thomas. Now, when Thomas was not the universal first tackle, in the media spheres and probably even in the league spheres too. I know a lot of teams that liked him, but there were Wills fans. There were people fascinated by Becton. So, it's similar. Obviously, wide receiver is a little more of a high profile position, but Thomas was a little bit of a surprise when he came off the board, and that kind of set the table for the next few picks of that position. I assume it'll be the same at receiver, where we could have a surprise. It wouldn't be shocking to see Neighbors go first. I mean, super explosive. I mean, and look at Brian Thomas. I think he deserves to be at least, I think you could call him the 4th member of that top group and not look silly. I mean, obviously some people have said he's, the first guy in the next tier. Fine. That's fair. But guy had like 80 targets and he put up 1,200 yards. It's unbelievable. He averaged 18 yards a catch.
Well, it's the number of touchdowns.
That's the number 2 guy there. Yeah. What's that?
The number of touchdowns.
Yeah. 17 scores or whatever he had. Yeah.
The guy makes the big play.
I was impressed. He cut down on his drops. He improved his efficiency, made a big stride last year. If he was on any other team, maybe he's, breaking NCAA records. So I don't know. It really is an impressive group.
Yeah, it is. And I you could go through the wide receiver list, and I've been writing up players that could be available later in day 2 if the Bears decide to go at another direction with that, and they don't trade, with that number 9 pick. And you're looking at the names, and these guys are quality football players. And for them to come in and be a, quote, number 3, whether it's at the X or depending on how you use Keenan Allen, because Keenan Allen can play X, or he plays a lot on the slot too.
Yep.
When he was with the Chargers. But, you can intermingle those because DJ can play in the slot too. But you can get really any type of receiver and kind of line those up, have the flexibility to line those guys up any way you want to do it. And I think that's what's really cool about this particular class. There's a bunch of guys that have size. There's a few guys that are smaller that might be pure slots, like the kid from Virginia, Washington, who used to play at Northwestern. That guy's a hell of a football player, but he's going to be a slot-only guy.
Yep. Oh yeah. There's all different types of body types at this position. We have a couple of those kind of freaky big guys, not as many, but we have a few of them. We obviously have the smaller end of the spectrum, the quick water bug type guys. I like Malik Washington, from Virginia. That's the small guy, like a not quite Tank Dell from last year, but that sort of thing. And then you have a lot of different sizes in between, and I think some positional flexibility. And obviously there's still, year 2 of Tyler Scott. We don't know exactly how all these guys fit in position together, but I think the fact that you said that you have some interchangeable parts and a good flexible tight end like Cole Kmet too, and DeAndre Swift for that matter, respectable pass catcher, not a great one maybe, but a good one.
And you got Everett.
You have Gerald Everett. I forgot about him.
You spent a lot of money on him.
Yeah.
To me, that says, yes, Bowers is coming in on a 30 visit. But the amount of money that they are giving Everett tells me that Bowers is not in the equation unless there's nobody else they're looking at.
I think they're smart to bring in Bowers too. I hadn't seen that, but going off your word, because there's been a lot of smoke to the Jets at number 10. So if you are serious about trading down and you show even a modicum of interest in a player, it's like, and plus there's been a lot of talk about like, okay, Bowers is just an offensive weapon. You want to call him a tight end, you want to call him an H-back, you want to call him a whatever slot receiver, fine, that's great. We saw it with Dalton Kincaid last year. We saw it with Sam Laporta. These guys just catch passes, right? They're not necessarily the kind of guys that you want isolated on a elite defensive end trying to block them, but they're great receivers and they do a job. So if you show interest in somebody like Bowers and kind of paint the idea that we can use as many tight ends as we need, you might drum up enough trade interest for a team trying to vault. Now, I don't know that somebody's going to necessarily trade up for Bowers, but you get the point. It's pretty smart to think, all right, well, if we want to get ahead of New York at 10, Chicago at 9 is a pretty good landing spot, and maybe that's one way to do it, or maybe they just really are infatuated with the guy.
Well, on top of that, and I really left this out when we were talking trading back before, if the Bears just trade back 3 or 4 slots, so go to say 12, 13, something like that, they're going to get a third round pick. And now they have 2/3. So, okay, that gives them ammo when you couple in, they have 2 2s next year. You got some ammo. If you really, really want to get into the second round, you got some ammo to try to do it. But you don't. Some people think, well, you trade up to trade up. No, you trade up for a specific player.
Right.
So if there's somebody they're targeting, and let's say you're in the middle of the second round, and there's somebody like, we really want this guy. Okay.
Yep.
We'll give up something next year, and one of these 2 and one of these 3s this year to get into that spot to get this guy. But it has to be, somebody that's special on their board.
Yep. Yeah, I would think it has to probably be, I don't want to say it this definitively, but it's either probably got to be a receiver, an edge rusher, or a 3 technique, I would guess, for that type of player. Like, it would have to be the perfect marriage, I think, of high on their board and high positional need, or relatively high positional need. That marriage comes together. You now have the ammunition, like you said. If you move down, acquire that extra third, you have a little bit more to play with. And by the way, just say, I don't think this is going to be a great banner day 3. So for Bears fans currently sweating out the fact that they don't have a pick in the last 150 selections, fear not. It's not a great, if you get one, great. This is not the kind of year where the draft is so loaded. I think all the effect is kind of watered down the 6th and 7th round a little bit. But yeah, if that situation does come up, I wouldn't be against it. Then you have Caleb at 1, impact player in round 1, like you said, somewhere in that, mid first round, top of the first round area. And then you have those 2 third rounders that you say either we move up with them or we get, whatever positions we didn't get with the first 2 pick, and then just try to go best player available at those spots. But yeah, I would think a trade up has to be somebody that they love and they feel like for instance, I feel like the old regime wasn't necessarily going to draft a receiver, but then they saw the kid from Georgia still sitting out there and they said, all right, we're going to take him, and it just happens that way. Or, I mean, you see somebody you like and you say he shouldn't be there, then I have conviction in the move. I have no problem with it.
No, I get it. To just change course on this a little bit, the reason why I keep going back to edge, I mean, number one, it's a huge need.
Yeah.
Number 2, is the depth at that position in this draft isn't very good.
I agree.
So if you don't get one in the first round, yeah, you can get one in the second or third. And there's some guys that are interesting that could turn out to be pretty good players as pros, but you're hoping. You don't know. And so when you take, because when I was working with Jerry, we always tried to put together packages. And This is like in the days leading up, and we'd sit in Jerry's office, and he had this big whiteboard, and we'd be just playing on that whiteboard, putting these packages together. Well, let's, if we do this in the first, what do we want in the second? And we'd have these like 5 different groupings of players.
Yep.
And you're trying to get, different needs filled with quality football players at the same time. So, and the reason I'm bringing that up is that when you look at the package and you look at the depth of the wide receiver position versus the lack of depth at the edge position, even though the wide receiver may be a tad better on your board,
right,
the package is better if you go with the edge player.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you have to look at it multi-tiered, right? Like as you just pointed out, let's just give fake draft grades, right? If you have a 6.0 grade on a receiver and a 5.9 on an edge, well, your first instinct may be to take the receiver, right? He's got a higher grade. It's a need position. Everything's great. Okay, well, but hold on. If you wait one round to your example there and look at what receivers and edges are left, you may have 5 5s and 5 6s left at receiver and 5 3s and 5 2s left at edge.
Exactly.
That's a problem all of a sudden. Now you have a sub-starter grade at that other position. So you do have to think at 2-dimensionally and go from there. So I'm with you. I mean, I don't even know that there's a superstar edge in this class. Like, I don't think there's anybody that I'm putting my money down and saying that is going to be a impact player 8 years from now. I don't know that I can say that definitively about one of them, but there's enough depth into day 2 to where I think I wouldn't be shocked if a Marshawn Nealand or a Chris Braswell or a Braylon Trice or a Disa Isaac or one of these guys who are probably going to go on day 2 wouldn't have just as much chance or maybe slightly less than a Jared Verse or a Dallas Turner or somebody like that, Laiatu Latu, somebody. So I think edge, it makes the most sense, whether they, again, it's so tempting if you get a Rome Odunze or whoever at 9 or 12 or wherever you move down to.
I'll put it this way, Eric, it's a good discussion. And, when you're in the draft room, it's a very good discussion, but at the same time, they would have already had that discussion. That discussion would have taken place before the draft. What happens if we're looking at if Roma's there and our top 3 edges are there? Then what am I going to do? Okay, this is bear down. Is it Evie or Evie? You said that last week.
Evie.
Next year's edge class is good. Well, that may be true, but right now there's one edge on this team. That's it. One. And if he gets hurt, there's none. You can say Walker's an edge. No, Walker's had 1 year where he had 7.5 sacks. He's more of a run guy than a pass rusher. He averages over his career like 3.5, 4 sacks a year. He's not a guy that's going to instill any fear whatsoever in an offense coming off the edge.
Well, let me jump in here because in Eric's mock draft that you can find on NFL.com, I think the last one you did was about 7, 8, 9 days ago. You've got the Bears selecting Jared Verse, and Dallas Turner was still on the board. So, Eric, I'd love for you to discuss with Greg, because I think Greg probably would have done it differently based on what he has shared on this show. So pretend you two guys are having that discussion at Hallis Hall, and Eric is saying Jared, and Greg, you're saying Dallas.
I'll just throw this out there. I actually have a higher grade on Dallas Turner. I was trying to sort of put myself in the Bears' shoes, but the more Greg's talked it through, I mean, I think it makes sense maybe the other way. I was sort of thinking I could see how Verse would be somebody that they'd appreciate. He kind of, I guess I put myself a little bit in Kansas City Chiefs mode because of the obvious links in the front office or whatever. To me, Jared Verse is a little bit more like George Karlaftis, who the Chiefs drafted last year, 2 years ago. I'm blanking
2 years
now.
ago,
Yeah, 2 years ago, I had to think. Yeah, years sort of all blend together these days, But I think he's a little bit more of that style, whereas Dallas Turner is more of the D Ford, I guess. I guess that's the last guy I can think of off the top of my head who kind of fits that mold. Maybe a little different, but more of your speed rusher who's a little bit raw, but I think he's got all the goods to get it done. To me, Verse is just like, he actually may be too much like Montez Sweat the more I think about it. They're different, but they're similar, and they're both kind of forceful edge guys. They have strong hands. They play through the whistle. They're really good at setting a good hard edge. So your run defense is going to be terrific, obviously, but do you create enough pressure with that group? Jared Verse is not like some, liquidy, oily hipped, slippery pass rusher. I mean, that's just not his thing. He wins with tenacity. Yes, some burst, some speed, but it's more about like powering his way to the quarterback, I think, at least that I've seen, than he is finesse and speed and quickness. So, I'm already undercutting my own mock draft, but I mean, Turner would be a good bookend, a compliment to what Sweat already gives you, I think.
Well, it's just like the top receivers are kind of bunched together. I have the edges bunched together, and it gets down to flavor. And I break it up this way: the guy who's the best pass rusher today is Latu.
Probably.
No question about it. And then, but he doesn't have the athleticism. So then you're looking, down the road that Chop Robinson and Turner has. He's a 4.67 guy versus a 4.48 guy. But he's got the production. He knows how to use his hands. Now, here's one thing that people, when you're looking at edge guys, especially in the last 3 years of college, and Dallas Turner more than Chop, is that Dallas Turner drops a lot. There's plays when you're watching Alabama's defense and it's 3rd and long and he's dropping into coverage. He's not coming. And that's the way they design the Alabama defense. And so, if he was used as a rusher all the time, would he be more productive, for lack of a better word, than he was under that scheme? Because the traits are there. And I think more than any other position, defensive end is a trait position, because you're not only looking at what he is today, but what he can be tomorrow. And because coaches think, well, if I coach this guy up, look out. And right. That their ego's saying that. And so you got to, because if he doesn't have the traits, he's not going to get it. He's not, period. It's not going to happen. He could be an effort guy, but he's still not going to get the production.
Yep.
Which brings me to Verse. Here's my one problem with Verse. Great motor. Knows how to use his hands. Whistle or snap to whistle type guy.
Yeah.
I think he's stiff in the hips.
Yeah, I do
and
too.
Here's where I saw it. And I brought it up on here a few times. The Florida game. So it's the last game of the year.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. And he's coming off the right side. Puts his right, he's got a clear path to the quarterback, plants his right foot to make the turn. And instead of being able to get low and make a sharp left-hand turn to get to the quarterback, he takes 3 extra steps.
Yeah, extra.
And I'm like, whoa, I never saw that with him before. And it just caught my eye. So now, fast forward, get to the combine. And I still, I've saved all the combine workouts. He did the exact same thing at the combine from the same spot on the right side. Now you get into some of the change of direction drills. Every time he had to plant and go the other way, he dropped his inside hand down. He's the only guy that did it. where they change direction very fluidly and never put a hand on the ground. You just watch the drills. Every single time he's doing like the wave drills and stuff, he drops his inside hand to change direction and go back the other way. What's that say? It means he's tight in the tips. He can't open up his hips as quickly as he'd like to. So that once you get to the NFL level, that's going to have an effect on his ability to be good versus elite. That's my opinion anyway. I'm not taking anything away from him as far as competitive nature, toughness, and all that. He's going to get it done. He's going to be a heck of a player. Is he ever going to be a double-digit guy? I don't think so.
And that's surprising too, because, like, this is a guy who put on like 35, 40 pounds over the course of his college career. So he was a smaller guy. He was a 210, 215 pound guy coming into college. So, a lot of those guys are sort of used to being the quicker, smaller guys. And now they're, again, they're used to getting, doing it at less weight, but still, that was when I learned a little bit more about his backstory. That's surprising. You're right. He just doesn't have that twitchiness there that I think Turner and Robinson and Latu do. I mean, the thing with Latu that's so obviously the injury stuff is a big part of his story, much like it was with who was the kid the Dolphins took a couple years ago? Phillips,
right?
Jalen Phillips. Yeah, thank you. But it's funny. He sometimes doesn't look the part. There were some reps down at the Senior Bowl where he got buried, but the next rep he came back strong. He's got skinny ankles, but you always see him in the trash and in the midst of the action and stuff. So he's a complicated one for me, but he's a handful. I wouldn't want to block that guy for 60 minutes. I'll say that.
He's a great competitor. He has better hand use than any of the other guys.
Yeah, technically.
He really works at it. He's got excellent short area quickness and change of direction. You watch him, and there's been a bunch of videos of him doing some change of direction stuff and bag drills and stuff, and he's very, very explosive doing that. Like it wouldn't shock me that as a rookie, very seldom does a rookie come in and get double-digit sacks. Has it happened? Yes, but seldom. It's usually their second or third year that they get to that point. But he's a guy that I think could come in as a rookie and have 8 or 9, especially if you got a guy like Sweat on the other side. And so you can't discount that. Obviously, did he pass the physical? From a few teams I've talked to, they all said he's good to go. He's played 2 years. It was a good surgery. He had a cervical fusion. Wasn't a big deal. The big deal was when he had the surgery 3.5 years ago. Yeah. And the University of Washington said, well, we don't think you should be playing football anymore. Well, he kind of bought into that for a couple months and then said, no, I think I'm going to go play football. And went down the road to UCLA. And you can't say UCLA doesn't have a good medical team. I mean, that'd be I think what it got down to is Washington didn't want to deal with it.
Yeah. It could be, right? And now he's, I think 3 years removed is usually a pretty good sign for even something like that with a neck. It's tricky, but I'm with you. I think even without knowing how all 32 teams feel, I can imagine that most of them are pretty good with where he's at medically.
We had a first-round pick when I was in New York who had to have a neck fusion in his rookie year. Never bothered. He had a real good career.
That's good. Yep.
And when you saw him a few months after surgery, he had one of those halo things on, and I was like, is this guy going to ever play again?
Yeah.
He was taking part in OTAs the following spring.
Wow. There you go.
You don't have your mic on, Aldo.
That would help if I had my mic on. We got a comment in the chat regarding Brock Bowers and why isn't Brock Bowers being considered among the top wide receivers in this draft? And given that he can play outside in the slot, he's got all that versatility, and given Shane Waldron's affinity for multiple tight ends. Yes, Everett has been paid a 2-year contract, but there is a potential out after his first season with the Bears. And Brock Bowers, according to so many people, is just such an offensive weapon. Do you think, guys, that Bowers might be under consideration by the Chicago Bears?
For me, Greg, go ahead. You
No,
start.
I was going to say, for me, if you trade down and he's still there, to me, he's not a consideration at 9. And part of it being that regardless of what he is and how good he is, he's always going to be number 2 here. Because Kmet's number 1.
Yeah.
And can you treat him as a wide receiver? Right now, isn't he supposed to work out like today or something?
Yeah, it might be today or tomorrow. Yeah.
Hadn't worked out. Nobody has time. Nobody has anything on him. Like with Marvin Harrison said, well, he hasn't worked out. Yeah, but we got GPS times of him that are damn fast. And in fact, a GM gave me some in-game GPS speeds the other day, and Marvin Harrison was 21.7, Neighbors was 21.7, Thomas was 21.8 miles. I mean, these guys can all run. So, it's what's his 40 time? I don't know, but he runs fast when he's on the field. Yeah. And he runs as fast as the guys that were running 4.3s at the combine. So you can legitimately say he's probably in that 4.3 range, as far as time, speed. And there's also a time on Harrison that DJ gave me that Pro Football Focus had of 22.5 miles per hour. Now, I don't know if that's verified. The ones that I got from a GM were verified in-game speed with pads on. So, I mean, that's moving pretty damn good.
Yeah, I mean, Bowers is I really interests me. I think he's fantastic. You put him in the right system. I think, especially, we saw, obviously, this is a pretty good era for tight ends. Obviously, Kelsey is in the midst of a Hall of Fame career. We saw Laporta break out last year. Other teams have used more 12 personnel. There's some talent at that position now, and it's not a 2 or 3 horse race anymore. And so I love it. Obviously, in Seattle too, when you watch their offense, they schemed up really nicely when you have all the focus on Lockett and all the focus on Metcalf and even Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, they could get Colby Parkinson on a leak, or they could find other guys on misdirection stuff. So there's plenty of opportunities for that position to thrive. And I think that if they use obviously multiple tight ends, you've got a inline guy and you've got a flexed out guy. There's 2 different spots. So that said,
and that's what Everett is. Everett is not a Y. He's an
H or F. Yeah, right. Whatever you want to call it. Yeah, detached.
And he's pretty good. He's good at it. He's been good throughout his career.
I've always liked him. He's bulked up, but he's kept some of his quickness and speed. He's a tough player to tackle. He kind of runs like a running back. So, I mean, those are all the things that have made Brock Bowers what he is in college football. I mean, I hate to say the comparison because it's such a morbid one, but you remember how Florida used Aaron Hernandez? That's, you can put him in the backfield and give him a handoff. You can flare it to him. You can split him out wide. You can put him in motion. You can do a lot of stuff with him. He's a fun player. I'd love to see him on a team like the Colts or even the Jets, or, there are a few teams that really make sense. I think the Bears, as Greg said, it would at 9. You'd have to have a scenario where 4 quarterbacks, the top 3 receivers, and then I'm guessing their favorite pass rusher are all gone the first 8 picks. The chances of all that happening feel a little bit slim to me based on who's there, but you never know.
Well, then you're also looking, potentially at a tackle. And speaking of tackle, I was watching Path to the Draft last night. There's some people who think 8 or 9 tackles could go in the first round.
It's crazy,
which I think is, yeah. I mean, and from a standpoint of a team that say, I'd like to see that if I'm looking at other positions.
Sure.
Because then you're looking at other players. But could they do it? Yeah. Will they take a tackle? See, I'm a big Braxton Jones fan. And I'm not going to change my opinion. His traits are rare. And it's like I'm repeating myself on the show every week. But where he came from, and when you figure that into the equation, probably one of the worst FCS programs in the country, and he played 2 years in the league. There's no telling how good he can be. Plus, he's got arms longer than anybody in this draft. He's got like 35.5-inch arms. He's really athletic. I don't think there's a tackle in this draft that's as athletic as he is. I mean, he can run, change direction, get out in space. But there's guys that were better college players.
Sure.
But, if he had played at Notre Dame or Georgia or someplace like that, you'd be talking about him differently. But he played at Southern Utah.
Right.
Which, that's worse than the Sisters of the Poor or whatever. I mean, just a terrible program. And I shouldn't say that, but they never win. They
historically,
don't have yeah. So, and you can't blame him for the background that he had. That
right.
What he was coming out of high school and what he is now are two different things.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about the tackle spot too. Joe Alt, Latham, Fuaga, Fautanu, Mims, Fashanu, Guyton. That's 7 without even, thinking about it. So,
and then you got the kid from Duke that played tackle or probably play inside.
Probably be a center, Graham Barton. So that's 8 in round 1. You could make a case. I don't think Jackson's a first rounder at this point. I did after I called around, I think more second round. Zach Frazier, probably more second round too. Jordan Morgan, depends on the team because he's sort of a guard tackle. But yeah, okay. 8, 9 offensive linemen, at least 4 quarterbacks. I would think at least 7 receivers.
I think there's 5 quarterbacks.
Right. That's why I said at least. I think Penix will end up in the first round or maybe Nix. You never know. But I mean, just think about it. If you're set at those positions, like you have your quarterback, you have your left tackle, you have your receiver, you're probably a pretty good team. But everything else is there. So it's kind of an unusual draft with how slanted it is to certain, especially offensive positions.
Yeah.
Eric, I know we've only got you for another 60 seconds or so. So tell us what you're working on over at NFL.com. And also, just a quick question. There's been a lot of changes over at the NFL Network and NFL Media. Can you give us a clue as to what might be going on in the near future?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not privy to a lot of those discussions. I know some guys' contracts were up and weren't renewed, and other people took buyouts, and it's part of the media landscape we're in right now. You can look at virtually anybody, and like I said, as we kind of joked about in the intro when you listed off the 4 or 5 places I've worked. I mean, it's unfortunately just sort of a blight on our industry right now, and figuring out how to make it profitable and how to make it all work with the right manpower is tough. But I love being at NFL Media. We've had a blast there. Got to visit the studios last summer. Hope to be back this year too. It's great. The latest thing I'm working on, I actually just finished last night, my top 100, my second version of the top 100 list. I think I have about 9 new names. Again, it was one of those things where I had some information. I put it out. I ran it up the flagpole with about 4 or 5 people, and they're taking out their red pen and crossing things out and drawing big arrows and telling me where I went wrong. So I tried to correct on some of those things, and maybe a little different than other people's top 100 lists. I don't know. I have a few names in there that I haven't seen a lot of.
When does that come out?
It's in the editing tank right now. The red pens are flying around. So I would think either late Tuesday or early Wednesday. So I'm not 100% on that. And then next week I have a mock. So yeah, we're getting to the home stretch, boys. I can't believe how close we are.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for coming on. I know you got another show to pop on to. So have fun with that one, and thanks for coming on, my friend.
Got to save the golden pipes, I got to keep these. Well, boys,
you're the best, Eric. Thank you very much.
Good luck with the last 2 weeks of sweating it out. Hope the Bears go in a smart, non-controversial direction with the draft.
Hey, there's always going to be somebody
take controversy.
Unhappy. We know that.
That's right.
All right, fellas.
Bye-bye.
Take it easy.
See you, buddy.
That is Eric Edholm. You can follow him at Eric_Edholm, AEDHOLM. He's got a great Twitter feed or X feed, and his articles at NFL.com are must reads. You know, he in his latest article, the one that he posted just a few days ago, Greg, he said that, you know, the Bears were one of 5 teams that really have to have an excellent draft because of the capital they have. Yes, they only have 4 picks, but to have 4 picks in the top 122 and 2 of those being in the top 9 puts them in a great position to further the rebuild. And I thought that was, I can't imagine anyone disagreeing with that. This draft has to be a big one for Ryan Poles.
Well, you got to get 4 starters. And when I say 4 starters, I don't mean 4 starters in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You want 2 of them to be starters in 1 and 9 or 1 and whatever, they have to be starters. But your 3rd and your 4th, as it sits right now, they have to be eventual starters. They have to be contributors. Like, Dexter and Pickens weren't, quote, starters last year, 2nd and 3rd round picks, but they were contributors. And, Dexter will be a starter this year. Pickens will still be a contributor because of the way they play their defensive line. They're always going to play a rotation. So, he's never going to get probably more than 50% of the snaps, but that's fine for a defensive lineman because you're keeping them fresh. And you get more production out of them that way when you keep them fresh, and you can keep, change them every other series type thing.
Mm-hmm. And Greg, in the chat, there was a lot of comments regarding the defensive tackle position. And one person said perhaps we're thinking too much in terms of the pass rush and it having to come from the defensive end. And in fact, Matt Eberflus said, I don't care where the pass rushers come from. If it's in the middle, we'll take them. So as you evaluate the defensive tackles available, if, for instance, the Bears move down from 9 to the early teens, do you think somebody like Johnny Newton out of Illinois,
I don't
one of the
see
other
Newton as a top 20, let alone top 15.
Wow.
In fact, I was looking at DJ's most which came out just the other day, I think Friday, or over the weekend, top 50. He has him at like 31. I got it here somewhere.
Wow. I'm amazed, frankly. Who was it? Somebody prominent as a draft evaluator said that they watched every Illinois game, and there were certain games where Newton
he's coming off an injury. So
yeah,
and
that might drop his stature down. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and he hasn't been able to do anything yet.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, I'm at 29, and he hasn't come up yet. 32. So he's ranked.
Wow.
On DJ's latest ranking, top 50, he's ranked number 32. Now, DJ's tied in with some people pretty closely. One being Ian Cunningham here. They work together in Baltimore, and they're very, very close. He's tied in with people at Baltimore, people with the Eagles. I mean, people around the league. DJ has got scores of good connections. So, but still, when you're looking at his numbers or his rankings, Eric's rankings, Mel Kiper's rankings, Dane Bugler's rankings, they're one person. Okay, so now you get into a draft room and you're getting a half a dozen to 10 different opinions in one room, not one. And so it's putting that all together. So I guess what I'm trying to say is just because DJ has a guy ranked in a certain spot doesn't mean the Chicago Bears or the Buffalo Bills or the New York Jets have it the same way. It's and he has a good tie with the Jets too, because Joe Douglas and him work together in Baltimore. DJ's got ties with the right people. We can say it that way. But it's everybody's board's different. I've been saying that for weeks now, and I'm saying it really for years. And your board reflects what you're looking for at each position, the type of player that you want at each position. There's going to be guys that say Baltimore likes as interior defensive linemen that aren't even going to be close to they could be, at the top on Baltimore's board, and they won't be anywhere near the top on Chicago's board because they're not fits. But totally different types of schemes. So
Tim, go ahead, please.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Tim has a question. He's concerned that, if the Bears take a wide receiver or an offensive lineman at number 9, can they find a starter or starter caliber edge player later in the draft? So we're talking number 75. You think there's going to be an edge there?
You got to get lucky. You got to get real lucky. You got to hope somebody falls. And for whatever reason, and is that going to happen? Who the hell knows? Right. If there's only a few in the draft, and people know that, and they have a need for it, that leads you to overdraft at the position.
Yeah. A lot of people are now speculating that Darius Robinson from Missouri could sneak into the first round because of the dearth of defensive end.
Yeah, I don't see him as an end. He's a 4'9" guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's 290 pounds. In the Bears scheme, I see him as a 3 tech. Mm-hmm. Now, could you say, okay, I'll take him at 3? Yeah. I mean, the guy's good, especially with explosiveness. I see him as in the Bears scheme as a 3 tech. And in a 3-4 scheme, a 5 tech, but I don't see him as a end like an end is or an edge. Put it that way.
Yeah. Well, when we were talking about defensive tackles, a lot of people commented. Berlissimo says he doesn't have a defensive tackle in his round 1 at all, but he does like Rook Orohoro. Man, I was practicing that and I didn't get it. I didn't nail it, but Rook Orohoro as a defensive tackle, he's been getting a lot of attention lately just because of his strength and mobility. Your thoughts on him?
He's a freak athlete for a big guy. He's very raw. I mean, he's okay. Good comparison. Orohoro or whatever. Orohoro. Did I do that good?
I think you better than me. Yeah.
He's the defensive tackle, say like Chop Robinson is to defensive ends. Okay, Chop is raw, but you look at the traits, the raw player, the motor, then you're saying, wow, give me 1 year with this guy and he's going to go into the Pro Bowl. Because that's how coaches think, and they're looking at the traits and they say, I can make this guy a player. And they got to love football. They got to have good motor. They got to be hard workers. And in fact, did you see the article Pompey wrote? It was yesterday in the Athletic about the other defensive end from
Adisa
Isaac.
Yes.
And he had 7.5 sacks. Actually, had more sacks than Chop. But Chop missed 3 games. He had an injury, I think a hamstring injury or something. Missed 3 games. But you look at the traits. He doesn't have the traits that some of these other guys have. He's explosive, but he's a 4.7 guy. Real quick first step. But when you look at the person, he's a winner. And the game means a lot to him. And when you look at his background and what he's gone through as a kid and what the family's gone through, he's going to be a good player.
Yeah.
You want him on your team. But he's a guy you're going to get in day 2. But does he get overdrafted? Does he get down to the 3rd round?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because you're going to see guys at that position taken a little bit higher than they normally would because, of the lack of top quality at the position.
Both Berlissimo and Don Burr like Mason Smith, the defensive tackle from LSU. Your thoughts on him?
I haven't done a lot on Mason Smith for me to really have a strong feel. In fact, I'll be honest. When they took 2 defensive tackles last year and they re-upped Billings. To me, it's like they're not going. Could they go in that direction? Yeah, if there's a really good player. But I look, it's more down the line, so I haven't done as much on those. I'm trying to, know the wide receiver class, know the edge class, that type of thing versus some of the defensive tackles. Because, you want to, I think they're very happy with the two guys they took last year, and Gervon Dexter and Pickens. And so I think, those guys had to be rookies. They played pretty good. They both came on strong the second half of the year. Now it's year two, and year two is when you get the big jump. And I'm sure you're going to see those guys be much better than they were a year ago.
I can say this: Danny Shimon is presenting his top 10 defensive tackles tomorrow night here on the Barroom at 8 p.m. Central. So watch that. The Scrolls asks, is there a Tommy Harris in this draft? I'm going to guess that you're going to say no.
No. I mean, Tommy was just under 6'3", ran a 4.69, explosive motor. What was funny is that, when you look at the overall production of Tommy, it wasn't great, but Oklahoma was ahead of the curve on doing rotation with defensive linemen. So Tommy was only playing like half the game because they were rotating their guys, and you go, why isn't he playing? But now everybody does that. So, but Tommy was special, and he came in as a rookie. If it wasn't for injuries, he'd be a potential Hall of Fame player. He had a knee issue when he came out, a very slightly arthritic knee when he came out, but slightly arthritic turns into greatly arthritic a few years into the league, because arthritis is a condition that never gets better. It only gets worse. And then there's that. And then he had the hamstring tear where it tore right off the bone, and he had he had surgery down in Dallas for that. And one of the Bears orthopedics went down to Dallas. It was part of that surgery. There was really a Dallas doctor and one of the Bears doctors who did that surgery, but it was done in Dallas. And, it was a hard injury to come back from. And, he did come back, but I don't think he was quite as explosive after he came back. So, his career was hurt by injuries as far as longevity, but geez, what a player. I mean, if you wanted to say somebody was close, you might say the Texas kid. But he's 6 feet tall, not just under 6'3", so it's, and people say, well, he might have short arms. Heck, he's 6'1.5" and he's got 32.5-inch arms. That's not short, because arm length is in comparison to height. He's got long arms for a 6 foot guy. Got very long arms. And you look at the reach too. And what you want to do when you look at the reach is the reach longer than he is tall? So he's 6'1.5". So that's 72.5 inches, right? And if he's got a 75-inch reach, and I haven't looked to see what the number is, his length is fine.
Yeah. Vince wants to know about Tank Johnson. Back in the day, were there character concerns with him coming out of school? And Lovey wanted that pick too.
There was concerns. I mean, Tank is originally from Gary, and then went to, I think, the Phoenix area, but grew up tough life. Never had the best of anything. Family life wasn't that good. What he was surrounded by wasn't that good. Gang situations, things like that. Then he gets to the University of Washington. He never got in trouble, but he was on the edge. And what it got down to with Tank was like, Tank had loyalty to his friends, and some of his friends weren't good people.
Yeah.
The guy that incident downtown where the guy got killed, that's a perfect example. and somebody that Tank knew for a long time, and he just didn't know how to say no. I got to know Tank pretty good, and he's really a likable, good guy and a hell of a player. You just had to isolate him, from keep the trash away from him, because he could gravitate towards the trash. And what was funny when and this is a true story. So we're getting ready to draft him. Lovey says, we're talking about him, and there's issues. And Lovey goes, well, I'll put an addition on my house so he can live there. And he goes, as long as we can take him. So about 2 years later, I go, Lovey, where's that addition?
I love it.
There were some situations, but I honestly really like the guy. I think if just he had been brought up in a different situation, you wouldn't have had those problems. But hey, is what it is. And look, with defensive linemen, we said this all the time. You have to look at them totally different than any other position. By definition, they're thugs. Okay, and they got a different personality than any other position on the team. These are tough, nasty people, and we used to say they all got a little crap in their neck. You're putting up with something. That they're going to have something, and so it's what do I want to deal with? Carter last year, he had issues. Is it? Do you want to deal with those issues? Sometimes it's lazy. Sometimes it could be, some
irresponsible,
some criminality or whatever. But it's not like they're perfect. And part of it just goes along with the position, and you know that going in.
And of course, the makeup of the team, right? So the Eagles were better suited to bring in a rookie who had some legal issues because of the veterans that he be playing alongside.
If there was a perfect team for Carter to go to, it was Philadelphia, especially at the position, because they had the people on the defensive line, some veterans on the defensive line that were really strong character guys. One of them still playing, the other guy retired. But Brandon Graham is still playing. He's like 100 years old, getting ready to collect Social Security, but he's still playing. I think he's 35 or 36 years old and still a productive player.
Before the show started, Creighton offered this. How does the DUI arrest from that Devontae Sweat has now on the records, how does that affect his draft stock?
It don't help.
I remember Dak Prescott got a DUI like 2 months before the draft, and he fell to the fourth round. Although I don't think he was graded much higher than a third rounder, but Dak survived that.
Because, well, first of all, you only can bring in kids for another week. A week from tomorrow is the last day you can bring a guy into your building. So now you can go there and do stuff. You can work them out until the day before the draft, and you can go and you're going to have to do it if you got a good grade on this guy. And I don't see him as a fit for the Bears scheme, so I don't think it's going to matter much for the Bears one way or the other. But for the teams that look for that type of player, you got a short time to do a lot of work. You got to find out, is this a one-time situation? Or is this something that happens more often than not? But this is the first time he got caught.
Yeah,
and you got to talk to the right people who have the right answers. And there are going to be people at the University of Texas that know the answer.
Yeah. Okay. See, Bear Boy says that there may have been rumors that he parties too much already. So we'll see. Bellissimo offered this earlier, and I wanted to get your take on it, and I got an opinion on this. Regarding Braxton Jones, his contract is up after next season.
Yeah, he's got 2 more years on his rookie deal.
Right. But he's asked, given, the Bears situation with the offensive line, does it make sense to look at Alt, Fashanu, Fuaga at 9 for future proof? And I understand Bellissimo's thought there, and I think it's a good one, to add depth to the offensive line, which is why I like Foatanu the most out of those three guys, because of the versatility that he offers. We know that he played left tackle at a high degree. He's being projected as a guard in the NFL, but he could certainly, if something went wrong with Braxton Jones' injury or whatever, Fontano could probably play that left tackle at the NFL, not as well as the top tier left tackles, but he could be serviceable until somehow that position is addressed later in the draft.
Here's where I'm going to argue with you a little bit.
Okay.
He's the same height as Leno.
Fontano is?
Yep. 6'0", 3'7".
Mm-hmm.
And Leno's played his whole career at left tackle and made a lot of freaking money.
That's right. He made a lot of money.
And Fontano's got longer arms. And it's about, and his feet, I mean, he is a dancing bear. He got great feet. And change. You look at the height, you say, I move him inside. But when you watch him on tape, he can play left tackle. And he's got the length to do it. Mm-hmm. What I do is I'd say fail first at left tackle.
Yeah. Okay.
Show me you can't play left tackle, and then I'll move you. Now, could go to a situation where, the team already has some good tackles, and now you got an ultra-athletic guy who can play inside at guard, and that can happen. And sometimes you want to get a rookie tackle on the field real quick. You might play him inside for a year and then move him outside. But there's not a doubt in my mind, because of his length and his athleticism, that he can play, left tackle in the league. Is he ideal for height? No. But there's other guys that have done it that have been that height and fall. The Patriots, and I can't think of the guy's name, they took a guy from Georgia who's like an inch and a half shorter and took him in the first round.
Yeah, I remember him. So do you like the idea? Well, let me ask you this. Rank those three offensive linemen for me.
To me, Alt is the only one that you would take
at 9. Okay.
That would be in the conversation. And I think he's already gone.
Okay.
I think the Chargers are taking him.
All right. So where do you think Fontano will go?
I think those guys, Fashanu, I don't think Fashanu, I don't think he's as good as people thought. He's a good player, no question. But he's not a top 10 player. He's you take him in the teams. If I'm looking just at athleticism, I like the Washington kid better than him.
Yeah.
He's not the athlete, but he's got the height and the length. He may end up starting at right tackle and then end up playing on the left side. Good player, but I'm not. He's not even in the conversation for me at 9.
Excellent. Okay. Let's see. Erase the Hate says, help me understand why Roma Dunze is ranked so high. He doesn't have separation. He's not fast at all. All he has is great contested catch percentage, which won't translate with the NFL better defensive backs. Why, Greg Gabriel, is he so highly ranked?
Well, I don't agree with anything he says. He gets actually better separation than the so-called generational player, Marvin Harrison. And I don't even think it's close. The guy who gets unbelievable separation is Neighbors. He just gets in and out of cuts so quickly. Rome is the slowest of all these guys at like 4.46, but he also is very, very explosive. He's got great body control. Watch him return kicks. He can make people miss, and he's got great quickness and explosive,ness, great hands, knows how to get it. I think I was doing a guy today for next year for one of the agents I work for, and I had to watch. It was a defensive back who was at Oregon, transferred to Florida. So I'm watching, and so he's playing Washington. And this past year, he lost a starting job at Oregon, but the year before he was a starter. So I'm doing him this morning, and I have to watch the 22 game of Washington against Oregon. And the guy who jumped off the tape was number one. I mean, it's like, yeah, he was that good then too. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Roma Dunze.
So I am too. And I'd say, if he's sitting there, it's a hell of a conversation. But like he keeps saying, that conversation is going to happen before you're going to have that conversation on draft night, but you've already had that conversation and probably made the decision before that on what you're going to do.
Okay. I got questions in the queue from Flex Diggs, Eric, and Brandon Lawson. So if you've got a question for Greg, get it in as quickly as you can. Let's go with Brandon's questions. He says he's actually working right now. He's going to watch the show later tonight. He wants to know, why doesn't Michael Hall, the defensive lineman from Ohio State, get any love? He's 20 years old, 280 pounds. I've heard some commentators say that this could be the underdog of the draft. What are your thoughts on Hall?
Again, defensive tackles, I haven't done as much as I should over the next week or so. But a potential day two guy that you just don't hear him in the first round. The defensive tackle class, they're not that many guys. Some years you got guys that jump out at you and they're going to be top rated guys and surefire first rounders. This year isn't that class. Like, you're creating first rounders or trying to push them in. One being Newton, Murphy from Texas being another guy. So a team with a need may push him up a little bit higher. But when you look at some of the rankings where some people have them, actually, I've seen people have Murphy rated higher than Newton, and you can see him in the late teens. And then the next guy would be Newton, and as we said earlier, DJ's got him at 32, so that's like the last guy in the first round.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay. Eric wants to know Kamara or Marshawn, I think is his first name, Nealand at 75.
Not even a contest, Kamara. But I don't think Kamara gets there.
Really? You think he'll be gone earlier than 75, huh?
Well, he's just my comp, and we talked about him before, is Brandon Graham, who we talked about from the Eagles. Pretty much the same size coming out. He's 6'1.5", 250 something, but he runs in the 4.5s. His arms are just under 33, but at 6'1.5", that's fine. Guy's got like 14 sacks, 25 or 26 over the last 2 years. Granted, he's playing in the Mountain West versus, the Southeast Conference, but he kicks everybody's ass. I mean, you can't block the guy. Great at the East-West game. Nobody could block him there. There's a kid now, I've gone blank. Another Pac-10 guy. Pac-12 guy. There's Jackson from Washington State, who I would love to see fall to the third round. But there's one other guy, probably going to the second round. He had 12 sacks, second to late two. And now I'm gone blank on his name.
Yeah. What school did you say?
It's a Pac-12 school. And you know what? I can find out because I'll just look up because I wrote the article. And when I go blank like this, I hate that. Must be that old age.
Tell me about it. While you do that, I'll read this from Scrolls. If Poles wants to make Caleb,
Utah.
Oh, what's his name again?
Jonah Ellis from Utah.
Okay, with 2 S's, I want to say at the end of his name.
That guy is a freaking player now. But see, I don't think he gets to the third round. He's a second round player, and he missed the last 2 games. He had 12 sacks, and he missed the last 2 games.
Interesting. All right, let's go to Flex. It's not so much of a question, but I've got a question based on what he writes here. He's hearing rumors of trading up for Marvin Harrison Jr. If we only get Caleb and Marvin Harrison Jr., this draft will probably be the best in draft history. But here's my question based on that. I've been hearing a lot of rumors about the Bears trading up for either Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors. I think those are poppycock. What do you say?
No, I agree. First of all, if we're right saying the receivers, this is around the league. They're grouped together, the top three. There's not one that's we're going into the year, Marvin Harrison was the guy. But coming out of the year and the draft's 2 weeks away, that's not the case anymore. Like I said, there's several teams that got Neighbors as number one. And I don't think there's a big separation between 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
So why would you give up capital to trade up to get one of those 3 when theoretically, depending on how they come off the board and who takes which one first, you're going to get one of those 3.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so but see, I love the thinking, and I look at history. Ryan Poles worked at Kansas City. We talked about this off the air. Kansas City never took a receiver in the first round. Andy Reid was against it. And who's one of his mentors? Andy Reid. Andy took a lot in the second round now. Took him in the second round like 4 times. But not first. And it's because, you know, Andy's Andy's an ex-offensive line coach. He's a meat and potatoes guy. Okay, what's Ryan Poles? He's an offensive lineman. What's Ian Cunningham? He's an offensive lineman. These guys are meat and potato guys. And the flash guys, you know, they don't believe in taking those guys in the first round, especially when you got a draft like this. Now, if they're really special, yeah, then they're in the conversation. And there's some special guys here. But do you trade up to get one? What?
Well, going off of that, Scottish Bear asks, is there a chance that the Bears take a defense? If the Bears take a defensive end early, the Bears could use their 3rd or 4th rounder this year, plus one of next year's second rounders, because they have 2 next year, to come back into the draft and select that number 3 wide receiver. What are your thoughts on making? Trading some of the assets for next year. And Poles is proud of the fact that he's built up all these assets in the draft for next year, but you don't have a problem with him moving a second rounder to get back into this draft.
Well, I'd be doing that to get into the second round. Mm-hmm. And you'd probably have to give up the Carolina pick. I would say, you know, I'd be offering the Bears pick.
Sure.
You know, you make the call, I'll give you our pick and the better of the 2 3s. Let's say you trade down to 12 and you pick up a 3rd. So now you got 2 3s, and you know you want to get into the second round. Mm-hmm. And I'd be, you know, what I'd be offering to the team, and you're probably looking the second half of the second round, is I'd be saying, okay, I'll give you our next year's 2 and this 3 to get that 2, and you know, they're going to say, no, I think we want Carolina's 2. That one's going to be a lot better. It might be the first pick in the second round. Just like, you know, and so if you really covet the player, you say, okay. You know, you'll have a good conversation, but you know that that's what they're going to do. Before you even make the call, you know that's what they're going to ask for.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But you don't throw it out right away. Make them work for it a little bit.
Yeah. Tony has an interesting question. What if Rome is there at number 9 and the Bills call and would like to trade down that far? Would you like to trade down that far in the first round? But if Buffalo would give you a 1st next year and more. So this year the Bills have
give you a shitload, boy. They're 26 or something like that.
Yeah, they're actually, I just looked it up. They are 28th, I believe.
Okay, 28. So you've taken yourself out of all the top receivers, all the top edge players, and all the top offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what are you looking at? You know, you're in that group, that 20 to 40 group.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the guy you take could be a second rounder on some team's board, and he's a first rounder on your board. That's what you're looking at.
Yeah.
They got to really make that really enticing to do that. And, I was thinking, because there's been stuff in the Buffalo papers about, they might try to go up to Chicago to try to get that, that pick. And I'm thinking, well, they got 2 twos because they just traded Diggs. And then, no, they don't. That 2 they got for Diggs is next year. It's 25. Well, they got 1 2 this year. So, if you, I just don't think Buffalo has the ammo to do it. When they can get a pretty damn good receiver sitting where they are, or just move up a little bit, in this draft. And Buffalo's got to get 2. They got to get one in the first round, get one in the second round.
Yeah. They've got a lot of draft assets. This is what they have. They have the 28th, the 60th, the 128th, 133, 144, 160, 163, 200, 204, 248. So they've got a lot to work with. But, it could be with a draft that's so deep at wide receiver, they might want to pass up one of the top 3 and focus on that second-tier receiver so you can get 2 really good ones with those picks.
Right. They got, like I said, they got to get 2. And they don't have a lot of money. They had to in order to trade Diggs, they had to take a big hit on cap money. So they're up against the wall on the cap too. So it's not like they can go out and sign somebody, and it's not that there's anybody left. And speaking of signing somebody, I've been thinking all along that the Bears would still try to sign a veteran wide receiver. There's only a handful that are worth the damn out there right now.
Yeah, right.
But that hasn't happened. And you're thinking, well, the offseason program starts next Monday. If you're going to do that, you'd want to do it before Monday. You don't have to because, the first 2 weeks is strictly conditioning. You're not going out on the field with them and trying to install anything.
Right. But
now it seems like, we're going to get a vet, but we're going to see who we draft first and get them after the draft, not before the draft. Now, that could fall apart in an hour from now. They could sign somebody. I mean, but it's been like 2 weeks since the last player they've signed. So it almost seems like they're waiting.
So take me through this again, Greg, the conversations that might be going on right now with the Chicago Bears and other teams about a potential draft day trade. They are, so for instance, we'd call the Raiders or they would call us and say, hey, we might be interested in your 13th pick if you want to move up. Is that the type of conversation that's going up? Is just planting a seed and then making another call?
It's early now. Now, so generally not having these conversations yet. You might start them next week.
Okay.
Could they happen? Yeah, they could. But for the most part, it's later. Like, for instance, when Ryan Pace traded up to get Justin Fields, he didn't call the Giants until the morning of the draft.
Oh, okay.
That's the first time he had contact with them. But he didn't, he was very cautious on stuff like that. Okay. When we knew we were going to trade down, it was my job to make the calls and all I would do is call it. We had a line in the sand. We didn't want to go further than, say 5 or 6 picks or whatever. But I'd call, say, the 7 teams behind us. And all I'd say, very short conversation. Hey, there's a player we like. He might not be there when it's our turn to pick. If that's the case, we may be looking to trade out. Just wanted to let you know. Period. That's it. If you're interested, give us a holler. All you're doing is letting a group of teams know that the pick might be for sale. Then you wait till draft day and the phone rings off the hook. Now, it could ring off the hook anyway, but if you let it out that you want that you may be willing to move, then your chances of getting even more calls can be a little bit better. But, I think in this draft, we didn't get to hit it with when Eric was on, and I wanted to, is that you've got a lot of players that are kind of grouped together.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's going to be flavor. Who am I looking to get? And so I think there's going to be a bunch of movement going on.
Yeah, I anticipate.
And it's going to be
too.
for, offensive lineman, maybe a guy like Bowers, wide receiver, whatever. It's not going to be for, nobody's going to move up to get a DB unless they're really dead set on somebody. But I can see teams saying, hey, this is the guy I want. He's going to be the difference on our team. See, I think like with Bowers, I have nothing against Bowers. I know he's a good player. But for this team today, I think he's a specialty player. And so, like, if this was next year or the year after,
right,
then you say, fine, go get him. But the team's not at that point yet.
Gotcha.
You follow where I'm going on that?
Absolutely. I do think that it's, and the Bears have been doing this because I bet there's somebody in that room at Hallis Hall who probably is a big fan of Brock Bowers. It might be Shane Waldron with the way he likes to use tight ends. So I'm sure they're having that discussion about whether Bowers.
But I'll say this just for arguing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It was Shane Waldron who wanted to sign Everett because Everett played for him before.
That is true, right?
So I got my move guy.
Okay, I get you.
So it's like, greedy? Is that what's going to turn to? Now I need another one. And what's funny to see is that generally speaking, assistant coaches aren't in the draft room.
Mm.
The head coach is, and the personnel department is, but the assistant coaches are in their office. And you call, and this is pretty standard throughout the league.
Okay.
And you call them in when you ask some questions.
Mm. Okay. So the
coordinators. The conversations that you're having with the coaches, that's going on now.
Yeah.
Not right now at Hallis Hall because today is the local workout day. So they're probably in the Peyton Center working out kids right now. But, as your meetings are going on, this is when the coaches get their say.
Right. Greg Squires has an interesting question. He wants to know, where did I put it? There it is. Do you have any hope that our wide receiver room now has a good third wide receiver waiting to blossom, which would allow us to bolster our depth in the trenches? And so here is what our wide receiver room looks like. Of course, no. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and then after that.
No, right now the number 3 is Dante Pettis.
Yeah. Oh, no.
No, sorry. Dante got hurt last year. That's why they put him down. So they were expecting some things, and he can return kicks. But I'm not. I mean, Velus Jones, it's 50-50 if he's going to catch it. Yeah, he's athletic. The same with Tyler Scott. Tyler Scott had some drops last year, so I don't necessarily trust him. And you got a new coaching staff, so he's got to earn their trust. And part of it, you got a new receiver coach. And I think that there's a reason for that, is because the other guy didn't develop receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'll be interesting. And, there's not a doubt in my mind that if they take an edge with 9 or 10 or 12, whatever that pick's going to be, that next pick they have is going to be a wide receiver. Now, and if it is a wide receiver at 9, that's great. But then they got to pray that there's an edge, because if you're taking a wide receiver at 9, you're not trading down to get that, because you're going to lose them if you trade down, unless you're going to say, no, I'm good with Brian Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Who, that'd be a pretty damn good consolation prize.
It would be. Absolutely.
So, we just don't know what their thinking is.
Well, a lot of people think that maybe Tyler Scott is ready to step up because he's gonna be so wide open with so much attention on Kmet and Everett and the two top receivers. It could be a great situation for him. But the problem still remains: is he going to have the concentration to catch the ball?
No, that's true, and he's not a big guy. Now DJ's got some size. He's 6 feet. He's over 200 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And Keenan Allen's a big guy, but if you're playing Keenan Allen at X, and then you can play Tyler Scott in the slot. Now there was times last year when Scott was playing the X position,
Mm-hmm.
but is he what you want at X when you look at his size?
Yeah, no way. No way. PZ wants to know, do you have any issues with the fact that Shane Waldron has never worked with a rookie quarterback?
No, because I'd say when he got the guy, he was a 30-year-old rookie when he got the guy in Seattle. Because what he did with that guy is amazing. I just,
Yeah, I got to believe that when he interviewed for the job, they talked about the possibility of Caleb being on the team and what Shane would do to develop a young quarterback. There was an interesting article. I read it. I think it was in The Athletic. They were ranking the quarterbacks in this draft and by their mechanics. And Caleb, by far, had the highest score of his mechanics of the top quarterbacks in this draft. But one of the things that really caught my eye is that the writer said a lot of NFL teams, their quarterback coach isn't necessarily adept at teaching mechanics. That quarterback coach is more about helping the quarterback install the offense, having him learn the offense and so forth. But that out of quarterback coaches of the 32 NFL teams, there aren't a lot of quarterback coaches who know a lot about mechanics. And I thought that was interesting because even like Justin Fields went to see a quarterback coach outside of Hallis Hall during one of his off seasons. Would you agree with that quarterback coaches aren't experts at mechanics?
Well, I can only say what I'd be doing if I was in position to hire that guy,
right?
And that guy'd be a freaking teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if he's a coach in the National Football League, he better have some understanding of the position because most of them have played the position before. But he better know how to teach it. And in fact, this conversation, I told you, and I haven't talked to Pep now in probably 6-7 weeks. But one of the things he said he wanted to do, and he was thinking of actually starting a business. Now, I got to give him a call to find out if he kicked it off yet. He said, there's guys out there, the quarterback gurus.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There are guys who teach you mechanics. And a lot of these kids go to these guys. He goes, there's nobody who teaches you how to play the position.
Yeah, interesting.
And he goes, I think that's important. And he said what he wanted to do is not just for pro guys, but college guys and even high school kids.
Mm-hmm.
And what gave it to him is his son is a pretty highly recruited kid going into his junior year or going into his senior year, I think. He got hurt, he tore an ACL midway through his season last year, but he's got like 8 D1 offers last year. And then he tore it, but he's fine now. He's good to go now. And but some good schools like Texas A&M was on there. Maryland was on there. I mean, decent schools were recruiting this kid. But it's, going through the process with his son that he came up with this, you know what? Yeah, there's a bunch of guys you can take out, have, teach them how to work on mechanics, mm-hmm. and they're going to teach them their way. But he goes, I can't think of anybody that teaches you how to play the position and how to understand the position.
That, to me, is wild. I'll tell you, if I'm an NFL owner or CEO, and I know that we've added more coaches over the years, we've seen NFL coaching staffs multiply, and if we have guys in there who don't know how to teach mechanics to a quarterback or whatever to other position players, I would just go livid, man.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a quarterback coach and he doesn't know how to help you with your mechanic, if you got a mechanical flaw,
Yeah,
why is he coaching?
I don't know. Install the offense is what that writer said.
Yeah, but that's what the coordinator's doing too.
Yeah, it seems ridiculous.
It's like what in the way you're describing it, he's basically the understudy for the coordinator to help the quarterback get through because the coordinator's working with the whole offense. Well, somebody got to teach him how to play the position.
Yep. Scottish Bear says Thomas Brown is a master with the mechanics. So hopefully that is true and Caleb can make the adjustments because they said the only issue that Caleb had, because he almost got a perfect score. They rated it on three things: efficiency, off kilter throws, and so forth. And so there was just a blemish in his score regarding accuracy when he's on the run. It wasn't absolutely perfect, if I remember correctly. But for the most part, he's far and above ahead of Drake May, Jaden Daniels in terms of mechanics. So that's good news. All right, we got time for just a few more questions. CJ wants to know, have you checked out the United Football League yet?
Watched a little. I watched my old team, DC. I haven't watched a complete game. I've recorded a couple games, but haven't watched. One thing that's amazing, and I was talking to Galco about this, because Galco, when we had him on, he was the league director of player personnel for the XFL in 2020 when I was the director of player personnel for the DC franchise. And Sam Schwartzstein is the guy who came up with this kickoff rule that the NFL has picked up. And that was one of the things that made the league unique. So now they merge, the XFL and the USFL merge. And what do? The morons get rid of the kickoff that was like, why are you doing that? And they're doing the old kickoff. And Galco was like, they got to be out of their fucking mind. And it's like, in college, you're not even going to see, it's going to be a year or two in college and you're going to see the kickoff that the NFL is using this year. Mm-hmm. And why did the UFL, and it had to be, they got some people from the XFL and some people from the USFL working together, but why the powers that be didn't stay with that is really beyond me. Yeah. Number one, just from an injury factor.
Yeah. Right. And, I think aren't they? I've heard these stories. Maybe you can comment on whether they're true. Is that they're hoping to be like the official minor league of the NFL, and if that's the case, their rules should be as close as possible to the NFL's.
Well, we were in going back to 2020. That's what we were hoping for, and we were getting a lot of cooperation from people in the league. Mm-hmm. I went to 5 or 6 different training camps in that summer. And the people in the league, the places I went to, couldn't have been more helpful. They put out the red carpet for you. And the problem with, and Vince McMahon, officially was saying, no, we want to be our own entity. We don't want to be tied in with the NFL. But I know the people that were working there at the same time say, yeah, we do. We want to pick up where NFL Europe was, because that, and you're getting players from teams and help them develop. And I know there's people, coaches and personnel people in the league would love that. The people that don't want it is ownership, because they don't want to pay for it. Mm-hmm. But if a league is its own entity, they don't have to pay for it. But here's the problem: but if you're getting, each team say has 5 NFL players, be practice squad guys or whatever, who's paying that guy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is the XFL, UFL, whatever paying that guy, or is the team that he's under contract to paying him? And then you got the injury situation. So that would have to be worked out. Right now, I do not like. I think that the way we did the schedule, we had our first game the week after the Super Bowl, and we were going to be done so that shortly after the draft, really, and so that our guys could go and take part in OTAs if they got signed by NFL teams, and then have some time off and go to camp. Well, right now, using the schedule and they're using more of the USFL schedule, they've only played 2 weeks. And there's not going to be that big break in between the end of their season and the start of training camp. That's tougher on those kids, not having that time off. Will guys get signed? Yes. Guys will get signed to fill out training camp rosters. But I think it hurts their ability to make a team because they don't get that. We had that back in the 80s when the USFL folded, and we got a bunch of players from the USFL, and we had like 3 or 4 of them in New York. One was Maurice Carthon. By mid-season, Maurice Carthon was like totally exhausted, because he had played a full USFL season, had about 3 or 4 weeks off, and then was in our training camp stuff. I mean, shit, he played like close to 30 freaking games in a year. You turned off your mic.
I was just saying that's not good for the human body to play that many football games.
No, but so that, I mean, that's my thinking. Why they wanted to have that later start. Obviously, the weather's better. No, they picked They picked Easter Sunday to kick off the league this year. That wasn't a good idea.
No, that was terrible.
They should have done it the week before.
Yeah, or after the NCAA tournaments was done. Bellissimo says, can Greg get word to the Bears to take a look at that kid who's kicking for the Michigan Panthers? He has 3 60-yard field goals in 2 games, including a 67-yard game winner. His name is Jake Bates. Now, you think the Bears are interested in looking at other kickers, given that they signed Cairo Santos to a 3-year contract?
They got people looking at players in the UFL. That's part of the pro scouting department's job. So they take notice of that.
Yeah. Let's see. I got a few more here. People keep asking questions, so you tell me when you've had enough. This question was asked, Greg Squires, what veteran quarterbacks are there out there to back up Caleb Williams? I know they signed Rippon, but do you think that this
Rippon's
team...
3.
Right. Do you think that Rippon or that Caleb should potentially sit if the Bears can get their hands on a qualified veteran quarterback to play during Caleb's rookie year?
Their plan is to play that dude like he'll get drafted 2 weeks from Thursday, and unless he'll be number 1. I think they can report the 14th of May, might be the 13th this year. It's always around the 15th. He'll be number 1 the first day he's out there.
You wouldn't consider Ryan Tannehill to come in to act as a
I can't see that happening. Now I don't know. I know last year's offensive coaching staff really thought a lot of Tyson Bagent. And speaking of Tyson Bagent, there's some stuff on YouTube of his workout routine, and I saw
that. Yeah.
What a freaking maniac this dude is.
Yeah, indeed. It was pretty impressive.
Holy, there's 2 different ones. And the stuff the regimen he goes through, and he's gotten bigger. I mean, he is put together now.
Yes, he has.
But I can't believe some of these workouts that the guy does. I mean, the condition that he's got to be in is just tremendous.
And of course, Evie reminds us that there's these constant rumors about Justin Herbert, there's no way the Bears would consider swapping Caleb Williams and Herbert or being involved in a three-way trade that would see the Chargers.
I mean, anything's possible, but why would the Chargers do that?
Mm-hmm.
They got one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And, why are you going to turn that around?
Wouldn't make sense to me, although Herbert might not be happy with the fact he's got nobody to throw to, at least as of today.
That'll change.
Eric wants to know, based on your Windy City Gridiron article from yesterday, does Greg see a position of need for the Bears that he thinks people aren't talking about right now?
No, I'd be shocked if they take we got 4 picks. Mm-hmm. I'd be shocked if they took a DB.
Mm-hmm.
Offensive lineman possibility, obviously wide receiver, edge. That's it. I mean, that's what you're looking at. The rest is going to be, what you're going to get in free agency, undrafted free agency. Mm-hmm. And, if 6 and 7 are lean in the draft, what do you think free agency is going to be like? But now, if you did a good job scouting, there's going to be guys there, and you got that pool that you can use. You might target 3 or 4 guys that you really like and give them a little extra money to get the deal done. Because you're going to have I don't know if the pool changes every year, but it's a pool that you can use for signing bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the same figure across the league. Well, let's just say it's $120,000 for lack of an argument. Okay. I mean, when they started off doing this, it was like $75,000, but it's up, it's into the hundreds now, but the exact figure, I don't know. But you can use that. I mean, you could sign 20 guys and give them all $5,000 and you've used your 100. Or you can really seek out the best of the best that's out there and give them $25,000 as a signing bonus and make sure you get them. But if you're going to do that, you better hope that they're as good as you are thinking they are.
That would always help, right?
Yep.
Cornelius wants to know, have you done any work on the edge from Ole Miss, Cedric Johnson?
Done a little, not as much as I need to do. He's a trait guy. I don't think, he's a workout guy who's got some traits, but I don't think he's as productive as the traits say he should be. But interesting guy. And sometimes you got to look at, okay, who's coaching him? What's he being asked to do? So there's more to it than just looking at the hard film.
Mm-hmm. You talked about Jonah Ellis, the defensive end, earlier in the show. You think he's a good fit at 122?
I don't think he gets to 122.
Wow.
I think he goes. I don't think he goes. I think he goes in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's an injury. That guy's a pretty damn good player.
Yeah, he is a good player. I like him a lot. Danny isn't as high on him as you sound.
I like him, and I like Jackson from Washington State. Jackson's got a motor. Both of these guys got motors.
Mm-hmm.
And I gravitate towards players like that. I call them snap the whistle guys, and because they're going to be successful because of that competitive nature.
Mm-hmm. BZ has an interesting question. Will Blasingame, the fullback, remain on the team with this new offense?
I don't know.
But this offense
is still there now.
Right. This offense is not adverse to fullbacks, right?
No, but how the scheme is the same scheme base scheme as they've had the last 2 years.
Right.
Okay, it's an offshoot of the Shanahan McVay scheme. Waldron would be tilt more towards McVay than Shanahan, but McVay got it from Shanahan.
Mm-hmm.
But it's how you want to, you're going to put your own little nuances in it, and it's how you're going to do that. The Rams have never been really a fullback team. So, it might be a position that, Blessing Game isn't going to be here, but he's still there now. So maybe they want to see what he can do for a few weeks before they make a decision. During the off season.
Right. I actually think his value might have gone up with this new kickoff rule because they're going to need him on special teams playing all 4 units in my mind. But we'll see. All right, this is a perfect question to end the show. Bear Me says, where do we rank in the NFC North? Be honest. Is this team still a last place team based on projecting what could happen in the draft and so forth? Do you think they're still a 4th place team, or could they compete for a playoff?
Yeah, I'm going to give, and you said be honest, I'm going to give an honest answer. Really 2 things. I want to know what the schedule is, because the league always sticks it to, they never get a cream puff. They don't get Western Illinois in the first game. They give them Green Bay or somebody like that. So it's give us a cream puff for that opening. Give us the weakest team on the schedule,
please.
Yeah, and I want to see how the first 3 or 4 games are schedule-wise, and then it's how quickly does Caleb develop?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the problem I see, and I've never said anything negative about him as a player. So, he's got rare talent, some of the stuff he can do. But already around here, the media and the fans, we're going to go to the playoffs with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And you go back, okay, last year, Stroud does it. He's the number 2 pick. The last time was before that, and it was the number 1 pick, 2012 with Andrew Luck.
Oh, wow. Quite a while ago.
Yeah. So it's like the odds are against this team getting to the playoffs. Could they? Yeah. Will they? Who the hell knows? But I don't think when you got a rookie quarterback that you can say we're going to be a playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
He has got to be fully prepared, fully ready to play, and this is a lot of this is going to be on him. It's what does he do to be ready?
Yeah.
And he's got to buy into anything. There can't be any holdout. There can't be. He's got to be spending extra time.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's got to learn the offense, and he's got to be on fast forward all the time.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I think that Poles should be careful about trading any of those draft assets from the 2025 draft, because he has methodically built this team to have sustainable success so that they're a playoff contender every year. And perhaps a better way to do that is to maintain those draft assets in 2025 and even build more draft assets for 2026 if possible. So that way you constantly are feeding the pipeline with new players who can replace costly veterans who aren't producing as much, because we all know that's how winning teams do it.
And I don't disagree with you, but you got some flexibility here that you have 2 twos. And you only make that deal when there's somebody there you really want. You don't make that deal today just to get a pick in the middle of the 2nd round or whatever, okay? Because you have no idea who you're looking at.
Right.
You make that deal when you get there's like one pick before, and there's a player that's jumping out. This is the guy we want. And then you're making the call, and then you're saying, hey, what do we got to do to get this pick from you? And that, that's a thing that would happen Friday night.
D. Starren says, didn't Orton get us to the playoffs? No, I think that the defense got us to the playoffs. Wouldn't you say? Wouldn't you agree with that?
No, hey, he was a quarterback.
Well, and I got to hand it to Kyle Orton.
I'm a Kyle Orton fan.
Yeah, I am too.
When we made the trade for Jay, I mean, I knew going back into the end of the previous season that Jerry just didn't think that Kyle was going to get you over the hump.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm scouting director, so I crave draft choices.
Exactly.
So now you're trading away all my candy. I told you I'm sitting there. This trade happens like 3 weeks before the draft, and I got Harry Heastan out working out different offensive linemen and stuff, and we're planning on taking an offensive lineman high, and then all of a sudden, I got no first and I got no second, and it's like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? But I mean, I get it. He wanted that big splash thing, and if Jay was a better person, you might have got there. But
right,
a selfish dude,
And Orton was the exact opposite of that. He was not selfish. He didn't care about his stats. He cared about winning. And
Orton needed to grow up a little bit.
Okay.
But by the time he had, when he was a rookie, he had a little party in him now.
Oh, okay.
But that's probably one of the reasons he lasted until the fourth round. But the talent was there, and then you see the numbers he put up when he went to Denver and stuff. Could we, if we had never made that trade, could we have been a better team? I'm not going to say we couldn't have, but is what it is. Can't change history.
Thank you for some nice comments about the show and myself in the chat room. We're going to leave it here talking about Kyle Orton as our finals. I didn't plan that. I don't know how that happened. But there are a lot of fans.
We got to talk a little bit when we're done here.
There are a lot of Orton fans in the chat room, so it's interesting to see that. Okay, so tonight at 8 o'clock, Dan Aguirre and myself will be back here to talk some more Bears football, have a few laughs and stuff. And we're also going to talk about the actor named Jack Nicholson. And I just saw a couple of Nicholson movies recently, and I want to dive into him. But we'll talk Bears and draft for the first hour and a half, and then we'll talk about pop culture. Greg, another great show. Thank you to you and Eric Edholm. We'll be back here when are we back here? Next Monday?
Next week is Monday, yes.
All right.
And we are trying to set up either Dane Brugler or Daniel Jeremiah.
Right.
I've reached out to Daniel. Brugler's got the Beast coming out tomorrow. He's probably still doing stuff. But
I'm sure. Yeah.
So, but he said contact him as soon as the Beast comes out, and the Beast comes out tomorrow. So
excellent.
But I think I'll contact him today anyway.
Yeah, he's a great interview. We've had him on before, and Daniel Jeremiah, you've had him on here on the Bar Room before. So those guys are going to be great. And Swifty is going to make an appearance before the draft too. So that's going to be awesome. So we've got some great guests coming up, and we'll be back here next Monday, and then hopefully we'll see some of you tonight. Take care, everybody.
See you later.